before the jury gets here. The first one is I worked on the jury instructions over the weekend, and I have a complete set now. And I'm almost done with them. I just want to double check them, and so I'm going to put them away for a day or two and then read them again and double check them to make sure that I'm not missing something or that I haven't left something out. And then what I would like to do is give them to both sides and ask you to go through them. And then we need to schedule another jury instructions conference at some point. And I don't want to leave it till the last minute in case there are things that I need to change or things that I need to think about. So do the parties have any suggestions as to when we can do that? And I don't need everybody to be present. Ms. Nelson for the defense and Mr. Orman for the people or whoever, but you can choose who you want to have present, and then we can go from there. I thought that perhaps it would make sense to do it maybe sometime next week. So my thought was I could give them to you toward the end of the week, then you could have the weekend. I can't think of anything better to do than on the 4th of July weekend than go through jury instructions. So you could go through them over the weekend, and then we can talk about them next week. What do you think about that?
It's been a dream of mine to spend the weekend like that, Your Honor.
I'm here to please, Mr. Orman.
That's fine.
Okay. Ms. Nelson, does that work for you?
It does, Your Honor.
The benefit of that is also that it would let you get almost to the end of your case or closer to the end of your case, which makes sense as well. And I don't know whether we want to schedule something on the 8th perhaps or the 7th. It sounded from what Mr. King said last week that you're expecting that you're going to have evidence on Monday the 6th and Tuesday the 7th, and then the 8th sounded like it was up in the air a little bit. And so I thought that perhaps we could use at least part of the 8th. It's not going to take the whole day, but at least part of the 8th to work on them.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I think my preference would be to wait until we've finished presenting our case, or perhaps until the end of close of the evidence, just so that I have the benefit of seeing how it all comes out in terms of submitting the additional instructions that I'd like to submit.
Well, we'll probably have a third conference. I just don't want to leave this one until the end. I want to do as much work as we can ahead of time. Again, because there may be things that I need to think about, and I don't want to rush it. This, as you know, these are not issues that you want to rush. And so my thought was we could do it on the 8th. I think by that time you may well be done with your case. And so I think you'd be in a better position to determine whether there are any other instructions that you want to submit. And then we could have a final instruction after that on the 9th or the 10th.
Yes, if the court is willing to give us another opportunity to argue any additional instructions, then I'm fine talking about this round that the court has just completed whenever you'd like. Next week is fine.
Okay. And then I've done 5 verdict forms. I think that there are going to be 5 different types of verdict forms, and my thought was to give you those, and then you could look at them, and then once we finalize them, where I decide how we're going to proceed, then I can draft all 165 verdict forms at that point. I didn't want to do them all now and then talk to you about it and decide that they should be changed. I should tell you, by the way, that there are a couple of substantive changes in the draft that I'm going to give you at some point this week and probably at the end of the week, and so you should look at that. Most of the changes are to form, but there are some changes that are substantive changes, and I'm sure that you'll want to be heard on. So the other issue that I have on my list is related to the limiting instruction that I've been giving with respect to issues raised by the not guilty by reason of insanity plea. I don't remember giving it with respect to the last witness who testified on Friday, and I don't remember either party requesting it. But it seems to me that it makes sense to give it with respect to that testimony and the evidence that was introduced through that witness. Was it Kimberly Ann Indorina? Is that who testified? Was that the last witness? Yeah. Any objection to me giving the jury the instruction with respect to that witness and I think there were some pictures that were introduced. There was a video as well, I believe, but I don't think the video was played. Is that right?
My recollection was it was just a calendar exhibit. She marked the days that she saw Mr. Holmes
Oh, okay.
at DHMC.
Okay, I was thinking of a different end of the day witness in terms of the photographs. All right, in terms of Ms. Indorina, any yeah,
I think it's Indovina.
Indovina.
Yes,
Thank you. Yes, I was reading my V as an R. Thank you. All right, in terms of that witness, Indovina, Ms. Indovina, any objection to me giving the jury the limiting instruction?
no, sir.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll give the jury that instruction today. All right, is there anything else at this time on behalf of the people before I bring the jury in?
Your Honor, regarding the jury instructions, would it be possible for the court to send us an electronic copy in addition to the printed copy? Because that way we can distribute it easier and not have to go scan it and send it around to everybody.
Sure. I'll have my staff send it to you in Word through an email, okay? And they'll do that to both sides. It'll probably be closer to the end of the week, as I said, but we'll send them to you before the weekend. Anything on behalf of Ms. Pearson?
Your Honor, there are a couple of witnesses the defense has indicated they're calling today, and I don't know exactly when, and I don't know if is that video of the defendant going to be for today? The one that was taken at the hospital by Mr. Gonkel? Okay, so we don't need to address that one right now because we have an objection to that. But if Dr. Davis is going to be called today, they sent us their endorsement, and I think it was D-161 listing who all of their experts were, which they endorsed their doctors as experts, but not Dr. Davis. And so we would be objecting to her being asked to provide a diagnosis. They sent us their endorsement, and I think it was D-161 listing who all of their experts were, which they endorsed their doctors as experts, but not Dr. Davis. And so we would be objecting to her being asked to provide a diagnosis.
Witnesses who were doing their jobs, and their jobs happened to be that they're doctors at Denver Health Medical Center. And they saw Mr. Holmes, and in the course of seeing Mr. Holmes, they treated him. And they treated him for a couple of things. And one of the things they treated him for was psychosis with antipsychotic medication, which caused him to improve. Now, they didn't render any real diagnosis of him at the time. They just observed that he was psychotic in their experience, noted that in their report. It says, under diagnosis, it just says psychosis not otherwise specified, and I think they would say that they have no idea what the diagnosis was, but that they observed that he was psychotic, and they treated him for that. These are notes that, Judge, have been relied upon by all of the other experts. And so it's in evidence, it's before the jury. All of the other experts have noted that these doctors said that Mr. Holmes was psychotic when he was admitted. I think that these folks can testify as to what their observations were, as to what they did. I'm not going to ask them about sanity. I'm not going to ask them about a formal diagnosis for Mr. Holmes. And I don't think they're subject to the limitations of Rule 702, nor do I think that they can benefit from opining about things that an expert could under Rule 702. They can just talk about their observations. So that's my position. All of the other experts were endorsed as an expert. This one expert, Dr. Davis, happened to be a typographical error that didn't get endorsed as an expert. But I don't think that matters, frankly, and I'm not going to ask for an expert opinion from any of these doctors.
And just so that I'm clear, you're not going to have her testify to a formal diagnosis, but she's going to say that she prescribed some antipsychotic medication because based on her observations during the short period of time that the defendant was at Denver Health Medical Center in November of 2012, she believed that he may have been suffering from psychosis, and she thought that that was the appropriate remedy to prescribe or appropriate treatment. Is that correct?
That's correct, Judge, and these psychiatrists at Denver Health did this as a team, and different psychiatrists saw him every day as they're in rotation, and so they treated him as a team, and the other psychiatrists are going to say the same thing, essentially, but the court is correct.
All right, Ms. Pearson.
The other psychiatrists were endorsed as experts, and Dr. Davis was not. I mean, she's not going to just come in and say that the defendant had a flat affect. She's going to come in and interpret that, what that meant, as an opinion about what he was suffering from. She would talk about what she was diagnosing him having based on her observations and then coming to a conclusion about that. That is more than simply stating her observations about him. She will, I think, probably say she thought he was responding to auditory hallucinations. Again, that is, based on her experience and expertise, and that is an expert opinion. So I know that this was a mistake on their part, apparently, but they endorsed the other doctors who were being asked about his mental state as experts, and clearly they're using this to go to insanity.
What's the prejudice if they have other doctors endorsed who treated him at the same time and can testify to the same thing? What's the prejudice?
Well, Your Honor, the court issued rules about providing endorsements of witnesses as experts. We went through the same thing with Mr. Eicher, that we had missed that endorsement, and as a result, he didn't testify because it's an expert opinion. This is the same thing for this doctor, Dr. Davis. They didn't endorse her as an expert, and yet really what they're asking for from her is an expert opinion.
All right.
Judge,
Wait, hold on.
Okay.
The question was, what's the prejudice? I'm not, basically that answer tells me there is no prejudice. I mean, hold on. I asked you the question, you answered the question, Ms. Pearson. This is already out. The jury has heard about this. There are other doctors who are apparently going to testify to the same thing, same types of observations, same types of prescriptions, same types of beliefs in terms of the defendant being psychotic in November of 2012 when he was at Denver Health Medical Center. I'm not sure what the prejudice is. If the people want additional time to prepare for to cross-examine Dr. Davis, I will order the defense to delay calling her and give the people that chance. But I'm not going to exclude her testimony. I believe Mr. King when he tells me that this was a typographical error and that this was an oversight as opposed to something that they did intentionally. And I don't see any prejudice. Yes, she should have been included among the experts endorsed. It sounds like Mr. King and his colleagues intended to do that. It sounds like it was an oversight that they didn't do that. I'm not going to exclude her testimony on that record. So if you would like additional time to look into her background or credentials or anything like that before you cross-examine her, I think that's a fair request, and I'll grant you that request. And I'll have them hold off on calling her before you cross-examine her. But I'm not comfortable excluding her testimony on the record that's before me. So, Ms. Pearson, would you like some time to prepare to cross-examine Dr. Davis?
I can be prepared for her whenever they call her.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there anything else we need to talk about?
No, Your Honor. I'm sorry. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Higgs?
Your Honor, with regard to the Denver Health video that the prosecution indicated they'd be objecting to,
Yes.
we are not introducing that today. In fact, it might be tomorrow or Wednesday, but I do have a copy for the court if the court would like to review it in advance. I have 2 copies here. I gave the same 2 copies to the prosecution on Friday. One, we've added subtitles because some of it's hard to understand, and one of them is without. I imagine they're objecting to both, but I'm giving, if the court would like them, I have them.
I would like him. Is that okay? Any objection from the people?
No, Your Honor.
All right, please approach.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Higgs, tell me more about this. This is a video recording from Denver Health Medical Center?
That's correct.
Okay.
And this is a video recording that was taken by our investigator, Mr. Gonglak, and Mr. Bishop was also present.
Was this the video recording that was shown during opening statement or part of it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And the people's objection?
It's hearsay. It's not an admission by a party opponent because we're not offering it. It's not a statement for diagnosis and treatment because it's not to a doctor. It's not showing state of mind for the offense because it's in November. It's not for the sanity evaluation because it's not to a doctor. It is simply hearsay. And it includes conversations and questions being asked by Mr. Gonglick to the defendant about the date and Thanksgiving and telling him that the Chargers lost. And then he asks him about shadows and medical questions about his medical condition. So we view this simply as hearsay that would be inadmissible, that there is no exception for this to come in.
Remind me, was the sound played during opening statements?
Yes, it was, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor, it was.
I don't remember any conversation about the Chargers and Thanksgiving. Was it played in its entirety, or was there just an excerpt played?
I don't believe it was played in its entirety, Your Honor, because it is about 40 minutes in length. And, Your Honor, I gave these to the people on Friday, and they've had them previously, but I gave them and told them we intended to introduce them on Friday. They indicated to me this morning that they would be objecting on hearsay grounds. I am not completely prepared to argue in response to all that right now, but I just wanted to have the court be given an opportunity to review them. If I could reserve to respond to their argument to tomorrow morning.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for giving me these so that I can watch them ahead of time. I appreciate that. All right, can we bring the jury in now? On behalf of the people, are you ready for the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, on behalf of the defense, are you ready for the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's bring the jury in, please. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect the jury is present in the courtroom now. Good morning, members of the jury. Did you have a good weekend? Good. Glad to hear that. Thanks for coming back and for being on time. As you know, at the end of the week last week, the defense was in the middle of its case, and so in a moment I'm going to inquire and ask them to please call their next witness. Before I do that, I wanted to tell you that the last witness who testified on Friday was Dr. Kimberly Ann Indovina. She's the internal medicine hospital physician at Denver Health Medical Center, and her testimony was admitted only for a limited purpose. You may consider her testimony only as to the issues raised by the defendant's plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. You shall not consider this evidence for any other purpose. I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again now. When I refer to issues raised by the defendant's plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, I mean issues that are related to the following two questions. Number one, whether the defendant was so diseased or defective in mind at the time of the commission of the act as to be incapable of distinguishing right from wrong with respect to that act. And number two, whether the defendant suffered from a condition of mind caused by a mental disease or defect that prevented him from forming a culpable mental state that is an element of a crime charged. Does everybody understand that instruction? And there was an exhibit, a calendar that was introduced through her. That exhibit is subject to this limiting instruction as well. And everybody seems to understand and saying yes in response to my question and is nodding their head yes. Great. With that, the defense may call its next witness. Ms. Higgs?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense calls Jose Lopez Sanchez.
Good morning, sir. Could I have you raise your right hand for me so that I can administer an oath, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, please be seated. Could you please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names?
My name is Jose Manuel Sanchez Lopez. That's JOSEMANUEL SANCHEZ
Ms. Higgs, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am well, thank you. I think I might have gotten your name then incorrect when I said Jose Lopez Sanchez. How would you like
It's a long one.
How would you like for me to refer to you, Mr.
Jose Sanchez is one.
Jose Sanchez or Mr. Sanchez? Okay. Mr. Sanchez, do you live here in Colorado?
No, I don't. I live in California.
Okay. So in Southern California, San Diego area, is that right?
San Diego County, yes.
Okay. Back in the fall of 2010 into the spring of 2011, did you work for a company called Marical?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
How long did you work for Marical?
I was there for about 9 years.
Okay. At that time in the fall of 2010 and into the spring of 2011, what was your position at Marical?
Initially, I started as a compression machine operator, but I moved up to a quality control inspector or technician.
Is that what you were doing in the fall of 2010 into the spring of 2011?
Yes, I was a quality control technician.
Okay. And what are your job duties as a quality control technician?
Basically, my job was to inspect any machine that was being operated prior to use, make sure it was clean, make sure it was sanitized. Once everything checked out, I signed my logbooks and they were on to proceed with whatever work they were going to do.
Okay. You're talking a little bit about machines that are used at that company. Can you tell me, or tell the jury in general, what does that company do?
They manufacture tablets or vitamins, capsules or tablets.
Okay. And what types of, what do the machines do that you were referring to?
Well, they have compressing machines, they have blending machines which blend ingredients. They go into a tablet, and then they're sent to a compressing machine that compresses the material into a tablet. And then they have the coating machines which coat the machines with a film coat, their paint, whatever it is that they have in their ingredients, and in order for people to swallow smoothly. That's the coating machine. That's what James operated.
Okay. You just mentioned a person by the name of James Holmes, or James, I should clarify.
Mm-hmm.
Did a person by the name of James Holmes work at Marical at a time that you were working there?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recognize that person here in the courtroom?
Yes, right there.
If
No? Sorry. Looked alike. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Are you a little bit nervous
Glasses.
testifying here today? You can relax.
Sorry about that.
This person sitting over here in the blue shirt with the glasses, I know he probably looks a little different than when you knew him. Is that right?
It does a little bit, yes.
Does he look a little familiar to you?
It does.
Okay. And the person that you were referring to as James, is that a person by the name of James Holmes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, when you knew him, was he probably a little more slender?
He was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did he didn't wear glasses at that time either, is that right?
I don't recall him wearing glasses, no.
Okay. When Mr. Holmes worked with you, do you remember about how long it was that he worked with you at Marical?
It wasn't long. It was brief, maybe 2-3 weeks, a month maybe.
Okay. I know that at one point you had indicated that you thought it was maybe like a summer type job. Do you recall when Mr. Holmes was in school during that time?
I don't recall him being in school at the time.
Okay. Do you recall that he was living at home with his parents?
Yes.
Okay. Is that sort of one of the reasons, because it was a short period of time, he wasn't in school, is that one of the reasons that you thought maybe it was a summer type job?
Yeah, because it was really brief,
Okay.
and, I mean, it was short time, so it seemed like, a summer job.
Okay. Now, if the records indicated that he actually worked at Marical from October of 2010 through February of 2011, could that possibly be about right?
Yes.
Okay. That's a little bit longer than a few weeks. Is it fair to say that, well, this was, geez, five years ago or so, that your memory as to exact dates is not quite perfect?
It's possible. It's been a while, yes.
Okay. When Mr. Holmes was working at Marical, do you recall what he was doing?
He was operating the coding machine at the time.
Do you remember what shift he was working?
He was working second shift.
Were you working second shift?
I was.
What is second shift?
You mean the time or the...
Yes.
It started, I believe, at the time at 3:30, and it ended at 12:15 in the morning.
Okay.
It was an 8-hour shift. Sometimes it had overtime.
Okay.
We would stay till 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes.
So you all were working the same shift, is that right? You and Mr. Holmes?
Yeah, we were working the same shift.
Okay. Walk me through a typical shift for you, particularly how you would have interaction with Mr. Holmes during a shift.
Well, when we come in, everybody would go to their departments. I would go into mine and kind of brief through what's going on in the company so I can know what to do next. Me and James pretty much just came in contact in the beginning of the shift. We'd punch in or something, I'd be like, hey, James, hey. He would go to his department, I would go to mine. And then whenever somebody called me to inspect the machine, whether it was him or somebody else, I would go and check it out. That's pretty much the counter that we had.
Okay. When you were working your shift, it sounds to me like you were responsible for checking out a variety of different machines sort of all over the lab. Is that fair?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Holmes, was he just working on one machine?
Yes.
So he would stay in the same place and you would be moving around, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. When you're moving around, going to the various machines to inspect them, would you on occasion walk through the part of the lab that Mr. Holmes was working in?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about Mr. Holmes' sort of demeanor in your interactions with him, okay?
Okay.
When you would either pass by him or interact with him because you were checking his machine, was he a real talkative guy with you?
No.
Okay. Did he ever initiate any conversations with you?
No, he would never try to initiate anything, no.
Okay. Is it fair to say he was kind of quiet then?
He was very quiet. He was unsocial, not social at all, yeah.
Okay. Did you try to interact with him? I mean, are you a friendly guy at work?
I am a friendly guy. I try to get along with everybody, so yes, since he was new, I would try to communicate with him, but he was really to himself.
Okay. Would he respond to you in like lengthy sentences and ask you questions, or was more like short one-word answers?
No, they were short one-worded answers, yes.
Okay. But he wasn't rude or anything?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Did it appear to you that he was like that with everybody that you saw try to interact with him?
He was like that with everybody. Every time I would see somebody try to talk to him, he was still one-worded answers, or very short.
Could you tell, well, were there any occasions where you went beyond saying just hey or hello?
Yeah, I do recall one time in the laboratory where he came in to, he wanted me to check something, and we just kind of like, hey James, how are you? What are you doing? We kind of had a brief, try to communicate with him, like, what are you doing? Are you going to school?
Let me ask you, when you're saying we, who were you referring to?
Oh, me and my coworkers at the time.
Okay.
There's 3 of us in the laboratory.
Okay. So go on.
So he was a new guy, so we just kind of wanted to get to know him, and we asked him what he was doing. He said he was going to school at the time, but He
That he was going to school or he was going to go to
going
school?
back to school, but he was working. He was in San Diego area, staying with his parents at the time, and he was just working while he was there. So he said something about having I don't remember if he said full scholarship, something like that, for his education. So, and he was living with his parents, and he was just making money for himself. So I asked him, why are you going to school, or why are you working if you have all your paid schooling and you live with your parents, you're not paying rent, why are you working? He just said something about, I just want to buy my slushy machine, save money to buy the slushy machine. I thought it was kind of weird.
Well, how did you respond? Did you laugh? Did you?
We laughed, we thought he was kind of playing around. But
And what was his response when you guys laughed?
He was kind of like, just looking at us like, are you making fun of me, or are you laughing at me, or laughing at, is it funny, or are you making fun of me?
Okay.
Kind of that look.
Did it seem to you whether he really understood the social interaction very well?
He calls for speculation and hearsay.
Sustained to the form of the question.
How did you take his response?
Objection relevance.
Sustained.
Was there a time where you were talking to Mr. Holmes about speaking Spanish?
Yes.
Okay.
I would object to any conversation, testimony as hearsay.
Well, that's an anticipatory objection, so it's overruled. If there's a question that you think calls for hearsay, then you can object.
In that conversation, was Mr. Holmes very engaging with you all?
Calls for a hearsay response.
No, I don't think it does. Sir, she's asking if he was engaging with you. You can't testify about what he said or what was said, but the question is, was he engaging? Can you
Yes.
not- Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Did he do anything that you thought was kind of funny?
He did we tried to teach him Spanish, and he did try to pronounce the words in Spanish.
Was he able to do that very well?
No.
And how did you respond when you tried to pronounce words in Spanish?
We just laughed.
Overruled?
We just laughed and, thought it was funny.
Okay.
And again, he looked at us like, are you making fun of me, or is it really funny?
Okay.
Just that look.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the social dynamic at Marical. Was there a lunchroom at Marical?
There was.
And where was that?
It was in the opposite building of where we worked. There was 4 buildings in the company, and it was the opposite one, right across.
On the second shift that goes from sort of mid-afternoon to late evening or early morning, what time was it that you all would go to lunch?
8 o'clock.
Okay. And would you all go to lunch together in the lunchroom fairly frequently?
All the coworkers? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, for the most part, everybody would go into the break room and have their lunch.
Okay. Did Mr. Holmes do that?
No.
Did you ever see him eating lunch with the group at the lunchroom?
No, never. For the most part, he would go in his car and just go buy lunch and come back and just park,
Okay.
eat his food in his car,
Alone?
alone. I noticed that because I would go out for my lunch and come back.
Okay.
Sometimes go into the break room or not, but he would always be in the parking lot.
Okay. What about sort of social, like birthday functions? Did you do anything like that, the coworkers together at Marical?
We did. At the end of the month, we would celebrate birthdays for whoever had a birthday that month. We would celebrate it at the end of the month.
Okay. Did Mr. Holmes ever attend those functions?
No, he wouldn't, but only one time he did. He showed up, and it was kind of, we were amazed that he was there. We weren't expecting him there, but he showed up, and we're like, oh, James is here, okay.
Did he speak to anybody?
No, he was to himself, very quiet. He just got his food and ate it and left.
Is it fair to say, or would you say that Mr. Holmes was just not really very social with any of the workers at Marical?
He wasn't social at all. I thought at first he maybe because he was new, try to get to know people, but he was there for a while, or after maybe a week or two, you would figure he would talk, but he was never talkative.
Okay. Do you remember any occasion where you saw him act what you thought was a bit strangely?
I did. During one episode, I was returning, I believe, a sample that I was inspecting, and I went into his the machine that he was operating, little room. I went through the curtains, and I have to go through his room to go to another room. As I opened the curtains, I saw him staring at the wall. I don't know if I can act it out.
Did he look?
He looked spaced out, like he had his notes, taking notes, but he was kind of looking at the wall and just staring at it like somebody was talking to him.
Okay.
And
I just want to have the record reflect that what you were doing with your face was right there, was you had your face a little bit upturned with your eyes looking up. Were you trying to sort of reenact what he looked like?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did he have any sort of expression on his face at that point?
He did. He kind of had like a smirk on his face, and like he was kind of like laughing or smiling.
Okay. What did you do when you saw him? Well, before I get there, when somebody is working in his position doing the pill coding, you said is he supposed to be taking notes, or what is he supposed to be doing while that machine's in operation?
Every 15 minutes, I believe they jot down what the temperature is, the speed of the rotating machine, all these other little, I'm not sure, I've never operated the machine exactly, but I know that they do jot down the temperature and the speed.
Okay.
Every 15 minutes.
So he had his notes, but he wasn't taking notes, is that right?
He was, no, I didn't see him taking notes at the time, but I saw him staring at the ceiling, at the wall with the notebook and his pencil in his hand.
With this little bit of a smile kind of on his face?
Yes.
So when you saw that, did you think it was kind of strange?
Objection to the relevance of what this witness thought.
Well, I'm going to sustain it to ask and answer. It's been asked and it's been answered.
Okay. Had you ever seen him do that before?
No, never.
Okay. What did you do in response to seeing that?
I asked him, James, are you okay?
Did he respond to you?
No.
Okay.
It's like if I wasn't there. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It's like if I was never there, because I was literally 3 feet from him.
Uh-huh.
And initially I thought he was playing around. Maybe he saw me coming in. And so he was kind of, doing that on purpose. So I laughed, and then he wouldn't acknowledge me. So I said, James, you okay? And he still wouldn't acknowledge me. So I was like, okay. So I just, just walked across, did my job, came back, and he was back to normal, like if nothing happened. He saw me, and I thought he was going to say something to me, like, I fooled you, or haha, something.
But nothing.
He didn't say nothing. He just went back to work. And
When you saw him sort of staring up into the wall or the ceiling with a little bit of a grin on his face, and you said, hey, when you spoke to him, did you speak loud enough that you thought he would have heard you?
yes.
Okay. And you didn't get any response?
No.
I'm just going to take just a moment, and then I think we might be done. Oh, it's right here, right in front of me. I'm going to, Your Honor, if I may approach with Defense Exhibit DTR-71, please.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Sir, if you could take a look at that. Do you recognize, I don't want you to tell me what it is, but do you recognize what's in that photograph?
Yes.
Okay. When you're talking about the sort of pill coating machines that Mr. Holmes worked on, is that what's in that photograph?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Does that kind of accurately represent what those machines look like?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you've seen those machines plenty of times before?
Yes.
Worked on them a number of times, is that fair?
I didn't work on them, but I did
Inspect them?
inspect them, yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd move for admission of D-TR-71, please.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, without objection, it is admitted.
And if we could publish that to the jury, please? So Sir, you've inspected these machines, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and can you sort of describe for the jury what this machine does, what we're looking at here in this photograph?
Well, basically the nozzles that are in the middle of the picture, that actually comes out so they can clean them and take them apart. Inside is like a giant, I want to say like a drying machine, and it has those baffles. So inside that pan, they would load up with pills, vitamins, and then they would set the speed with the nozzles on the left, or the buttons on the left.
Behind, the buttons behind that
The
circular?
plastic, yeah, that's the plastic cover.
Okay.
They would put the nozzles inside and then turn it on, spray it at their speed and the correct speed, the correct pressure, and the machine would basically just rotate and the pills would be sprayed inside.
And do you know how long it would take to do that?
It would depend on the vitamin. Sometimes it would take 30 minutes, sometimes 2-3 hours.
Okay. And then it was the responsibility of the pill coating operator to document that as it's going along?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then when a batch was done, is that when you would come in to inspect or clean, or?
Yes, they would actually drop it in the bottom of the, you can't really see it, but at the bottom they would put in this other pan, a rolling pan, and the doors at the bottom would open and it would drop into that pan. Once that happened, they would go and call me either by phone or they would go into my lab and tell me, hey, I need you to inspect this batch. And I would go in there and grab my sample.
So you would inspect the batch?
Yes, take a small sample, maybe 2-3 kilos.
And when we're talking about the batch, we're talking about the actual pills that have been coated? Is that right? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Then would you have to do anything to the machine before they could do a new batch?
If it was a completely new material, they would have to wash it completely and disinfect it, and then they would call me and I would check it out, revise it, make sure everything's good.
Make sure it's okay to do
Make
another
sure
batch?
it's clean and ready to use, yes, for a different batch.
Now, to be clear for the jury, in your experience with Mr. Holmes working on this machine, he was able to communicate with you when you needed to inspect a batch or inspect a machine, is that right?
Leading.
Christine.
Was he able to communicate to you when he was supposed to?
Yes, ma'am.
And he was able to operate the machine? Was he able to operate the machine?
Yes, ma'am.
When he was working at Marical, did he show up to work on time?
Every time.
Did he stay to the end of the shift and complete his hours?
Just his 8-hour shift, left on time, came in at time, and went home.
Able to do his job?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sir, I don't have any further questions for you. I thank you very much. We can take that down.
Any cross-examination? I think you'll need to plug it in, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. King. Sir, I have a few questions for you. If you don't understand any of my questions, just let me know, and I'll try to make it understandable.
Okay.
When's the last time you would have seen the defendant prior to today? And I don't mean on TV, I mean in person.
In person?
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Sometime in the early part of 2011?
Probably the late 2011.
Okay, well, he would have moved out to Colorado to start graduate school in about May of 2011, so it would have had to have been before that, right?
Would have been before that.
So would you think about a year and a half or so maybe before the massacre at the theater?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative is the formative question.
Sustained.
All right, about a year and a half or so before the 12 people were shot and killed at the theater?
Yes.
And you never hung out with the defendant outside of work, correct?
Correct.
So you never had an opportunity to see how he reacted and got along with his personal friends, with his family, and people like that, correct?
Correct.
And he never had a circumstance where, like, a friend dropped by the work or something, and you got a chance to see that. That never happened, correct?
No, never.
So you don't know whether he was the same outside of work or different outside of work, correct?
Correct.
And even though you had a brief conversation with him about the slushy machine, and we'll get to that in a little bit, you don't know what the circumstances were that led to him taking that job, correct?
Correct.
You don't know if his mom said, you got to take a job and stop playing video games, correct?
Correct.
You don't know if he really sort of resented having to take that job, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation,
I'm asking him if he knows, Your Honor.
and it's been asked and answered.
Overruled on both counts.
So you don't know whether or not he resented having to take that job, correct?
Correct.
And you don't know whether he found that job extremely boring, correct?
Correct.
You don't know whether he felt that that job was beneath his intellectual abilities, correct?
Correct.
And this job was just a temporary thing with him, correct?
I believe so, yes.
You were never under the impression that he was going to have a career at this
No.
employer, correct?
Correct.
Now, you certainly never had a chance to sit and joke around with him and get to understand his sense of humor, right?
Correct.
In fact, you didn't really know him all that well because when you were asked to identify him, you pointed out someone other than him in his room, correct?
Correct.
Now, you said that when he said the thing about the slushy machine, you thought he was playing around and joking, correct?
Yes, I did.
And that does sound like something that could be a joke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
And I don't mean to force you to say yes, it's for the court reporter there, she can't take down
I understand.
Uh-huh. I want to talk about this thing where you described the pill coating process and you saw him in the room sort of looking at the ceiling with, did you say a smirk on his face?
Yes.
And you said that when you're doing this process, you got to log the time or the readings on the machine every 15 minutes, is that right?
Yes.
So and he was supposed to stay in the room with the machine?
Yes.
And I take it he wasn't allowed to sit there and read a novel or watch TV or something while that was going on?
No, that wasn't allowed.
So what would happen in between those 15-minute things where he has to mark what's going on the machine?
They would either clean their buckets that they had there or maybe sweep their area, just keeping the area clean.
So there's not a great amount of intellectual activity during that time, correct?
Correct.
And for a real smart person, that could be pretty boring, right?
I assume so.
And have you ever heard daydreaming?
I have.
And have you ever seen a person just in regular life sort of daydreaming and maybe laugh to themselves at something funny that they thought of?
Yeah.
And sometimes people might even do that staring at the ceiling, right?
Yes.
When you talked with him, would it be fair to say that he maintained good eye contact with you?
For the most part, he did, yes.
And he did his job, came on time, left on time, correct?
Correct.
Can I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
How would he dress? It was like normal guy at the plant?
Yeah, just normal clothing, and the company would supply us with coats, and everybody would have to wear a coat.
Like a lab coat?
Yes, lab coat.
And there's nothing unusual about his hygiene or appearance or anything like that?
No.
Thank you. I don't have anything further on cross-examination.
All right, thank you. Any redirect, Ms. Higgs?
No, Your Honor.
All right, and the jury does not appear to have any questions for this witness. May this witness be released from his subpoena, Ms. Higgs?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection, Mr. Orman?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, sir, thank you. Call your next witness, please.
Your Honor, we'd call David Maldonado.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Could I have you raise your right hand for me, please, so that I can administer an oath? You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, please be seated. You can hand me that exhibit there. Could you please tell us your full name for the record?
David Maldonado,
And can you spell your first and last names?
D-A-B-I-D, Maldonado. It's M-A-L-D-O-N-A-D-O.
All right, Ms. Brady, you may proceed.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Can you tell the jury where you're from?
I'm from Oceanside, California.
All right, and how are you employed?
I work at a nutritional company by the name of Miracle.
And is Merical M-E-R-I-C-A-L?
Yes.
Okay. And what kind of company is that?
We manufacture natural supplements, calciums, natural herbs, and vitamins, just regular vitamins.
How long have you worked there?
I'm going on 14 years.
All right. Did you work there in the fall of 2010 into the spring of 2011?
Yes.
And did a man by the name of James Holmes work there at that time?
Yes, I did.
And do you recognize Mr. Holmes?
Yes, I do.
How long did Mr. Holmes work there? Do you recall?
I took over on the second shift on November of 2010, and I only remember working along with Mr. Holmes for around 3 weeks.
For approximately 3 weeks?
Yes.
And what was your job assignment at that time?
I was the supervisor of the whole second shift
And what time of day approximately was the second shift?
from 3:45 to 2:30 in the morning.
Okay, so 3:45 in the afternoon to 2:30 in the morning?
Yes.
Okay. What did Mr. Holmes do for work at Merical?
He was an operator for a coding machine. That's where a coding machine, it's a machine where we put tablets and we apply a liquid in order to give it a coat to last longer and so people can swallow it a little better.
Okay. Your Honor, can I show this witness D-TR-71 that was just previously admitted, please?
Yes, do you want me to hand this to him?
Please, Your
Here
Honor,
you go,
thank
sir.
you. And if we could put that on the screen?
You bet.
Thank you. Mr. Maldonado, is this the machine that you were describing?
Yes, this is a high coder model 170.
And so that's the machine that coats the vitamins or the pills?
Yes.
And does that look like the machine that Mr. Holmes worked on?
That's the machine that Mr. Holmes worked on, yes.
Okay, we can take that down. Thank you, sir. Can you describe for the jury what your impressions were of Mr. Holmes as you met him?
Right. When I took over on second shift in November, there were a lot of faces that I knew, but there were a lot of new employees or temps, as Mr. Holmes, he was through a temp agency that worked with us. I needed to go around and introduce myself so they knew who I was. For the first week, as I passed through the coding department where he worked, I would, hey, hello, how you doing? Introduce myself and ask him what the process of the machine, how was the process, was he doing okay, was there anything he needed? And every time I passed and talked to him, he became nervous and he would just pull into a corner. Well, there's a square room and there was a pallet in front and he would go in between the pallet and the machine on the corner and he would get really, as I said, really nervous. He would take his goggles off and make those long eyes and he would feel like real intimidated. Well, that went on like for the first 3-4 days. I went over to our HR department and asked them about Mr. Holmes.
Well, I'm going to object to this conversation as hearsay.
Sustained.
Without telling us what was said, you went and discussed this issue with HR at the company?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you take any actions then to try and make Mr. Holmes feel more comfortable or anything?
I mean, I would pass by and say hello, ask him about the processes. Each time I tried to get near him, at the same thing, he got intimidated, nervous, and I just stepped off. And I mean, after the first week that I was there, he put in his 2-week notice that he was leaving, and after that, I just kind of stayed away from him.
Okay. Did you get the impression like that he was just a rude person?
No, he was nice, he was cordial. He was just intimidated by, I felt he was intimidated by me.
Okay. Was it your understanding he was at ease with anyone else at the company?
No, he had a pretty good relationship with the co-workers. I believe there were like around 4 or 5 more employees working on that department. They all seemed to like him.
Did Mr. Holmes socialize a lot with those other employees?
He didn't socialize much with anyone. He was just a quiet person. He did his job, and that was it.
Did you ever see him eating lunch with any of the other employees or taking a break with anyone?
The only time that he stepped into our lunchroom, it was at a baby shower that the employees were doing for another employee that worked on the department that Mr. Holmes worked. That was the only time he went into the lunchroom that I saw him.
Did he talk a lot at that baby shower?
No, he was mainly just standing, applauding, he ate cake, and he went back to work.
Okay. When you would try and talk with him, would he make eye contact with you?
He wouldn't. He would try to kind of hide his look and look down and react as a 5 to 9-year-old boy.
He appeared like a boy to you?
Yes.
Did he ever cause any trouble for you at the plant?
No, never.
The entire time that you were around him, did you ever see him carry on a conversation or do much talking at all?
Not much. At the end, when he, like 2-3 days before he left, I remember walking through that department, and yeah, his coworkers were chatting with him, and they were asking him where was he going to go. He explained to them, and then I got near them and I started hearing the conversation, and they were just teasing. They told me, look, he's moving on, and here, James, tell him what you wanna do, what you wanna get. And he
Object to hearsay.
All right, sustained.
Did you think that Mr. Holmes was just a shy person, or were you worried that it was more than just shyness?
I was worried that it was more than just shyness.
Why is that?
He was odd. He did not act normal, regular like the other employees. I would understand when a new person or gets introduced, it tends to be a little shy, but within 3-4 days, they know who you are and they come forward, they talk to you. They're normal, they appear normal.
And he never got to that point?
No.
Okay. Was it your understanding that he left Marical because he was going to go back to school?
Yes.
Did you ever have an opportunity to socialize or hang out with him outside of work?
Never, no.
Do you know anyone who socialized with him outside of work?
No.
Do you know where he would take his lunch hours?
His car.
With anyone?
Not that I know of.
And the work that he was doing, did it involve any kind of intellectual abilities? Did you have to be able to do math or anything to do the job that he did?
Yes, you have to be good at math or good at using a calculator.
Okay. And could you tell whether he seemed to be good at math or whether he used a calculator?
I am, from what I understand from his lead, he was very good at math and he would do math on his head. I mean, we would use a calculator, he would do it on his head.
And was he good at doing the job?
Yes, he was. I never received any complaints. There were no errors on the production. Everything was good.
And what stuck out was just his odd sort of social behavior.
Yes.
If I can have a moment.
Yes.
That's all I have, Mr. Maldonado. The district attorney might have some questions for you.
Is there any cross-examination, Mr. Orman?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I have a few questions for you. It sounds like you knew the defendant for about 3 weeks
That's right.
in November of 2010.
Yes.
And since, so did it go into December or was it all during November?
I can't recall that. I mean, I remember, after a week that I took over second shift, within a week, he put in his 2 weeks that he was leaving, and that's it.
And fair to say that apart from maybe on TV, you haven't seen him since he left Maricao
That's right.
until today.
That's right.
And as Ms. Brady asked you, the only opportunity you really had to observe him was during work, correct?
Correct.
You never hung out with him, never went to his house, never went to a bar with him or anything like that?
That's right. Never.
You never got to see what he was like outside of the work environment?
That's right.
But in your opinion, he was an ideal employee at Maricao, correct?
He was quiet, and he did what he was supposed to.
Do you remember speaking with Mr. Bishop, an investigator for Ms. Brady's office, and this would have been in June of 2013, and saying that, quote, I would say he was the ideal employee?
No, I said he did a good job, and I don't recall saying that specific words that he was an ideal employee. I remember that I said he was a good employee.
And once you would actually start talking to him, he would respond, correct?
He would respond, yes.
Can I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
The job that he was doing, is it typical for the employees in that job to be an honors graduate from UC Riverside?
I'd object to foundation.
Sir, I don't know whether you have enough knowledge to answer this question. If you do not, then let us know. Repeat the question, please.
Sir, is it typical for people in the job that the defendant was doing on the pill coating machine to have a bachelor's degree?
In the industry, it's normal. On that particular department, no.
And how about graduating with honors from a place like UC Riverside?
No.
Would you say that an honors graduate in neuroscience from UC Riverside is a little overqualified for that job?
Objection, foundation.
Overruled.
I wouldn't say overqualified, but from what I understand, people need to do whatever they need to get a job.
Okay. Everybody needs to make a living.
Yes.
Is that the kind of job that might be boring for someone with that educational background?
Yes, but within our industry, our company, there's many different branches that I mean, a person that exceeds might move on to.
When you saw the defendant at work, was he dressed appropriately for the job?
Yeah, I mean, we provide our own coats to our work, so, I mean, he wasn't in a suit or anything. He was casual.
And anything unusual about his hygiene or things like that?
No.
Thank you. Your Honor, I don't have any further questions on cross-examination.
All right, thank you. Ms. Brady, do you have any redirect?
Very, very short.
Okay.
Mr. Maldonado, was it your understanding that Mr. Holmes was there through a temporary agency?
That's right.
And when he would respond to you, would he talk a lot, or would his responses to you be very short?
Very short. He would just answer whatever I asked, and as I said, turn around or just act nervous, frightened.
Frightened?
Yes.
Okay. And it sounds like you're not exactly sure of the dates, but it seems like you're sure that it was during the last 3 weeks that Mr. Holmes worked for Marical.
Yes,
And that was when your interaction with him was?
that's correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Orman, do you have any recross?
I do not. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, and the jury does not appear to have any questions for this witness. Ms. Brady, may this witness be released from his subpoena?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Is there any objection, Mr. Orman?
No objection.
All right, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Call your next witness, please.
The defense would call Dr. Rachel Davis.
Good morning, doctor. Could I have you raise your right hand, please, so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, please be seated. You can hand me that exhibit there. Thank you. Please tell us your full name for the record and spell your first, middle, and last names.
Rachel Ann Davis, Rachel Annene Davis.
All right, you may proceed, Mr. King.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Thank you for taking the time to come down and talk to us. How are you employed, ma'am?
I'm currently on faculty at the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Colorado, Denver, and I also work part-time in the Denver Health Psych ER.
Are you a psychiatrist?
I am a psychiatrist.
Can you briefly describe to us what your educational background is? Where did you go to undergraduate school?
I went to undergraduate school at University of Colorado, Boulder. I have a degree in molecular, cellular, and developmental biology. I went to medical school at University of Colorado Health Sciences Center, and I went to my 4 years of psychiatry residency at University of Colorado Health Sciences Center.
When did you graduate from medical school?
2005,
And when did you complete your residency?
2009.
And so are you board certified or
Yes.
not?
I am board certified.
And what discipline are you board certified in?
Psychiatry.
And what work history have you had as a board certified psychiatrist? Principally at Denver Health or?
Well, I did 3 years half-time private practice, a half-time Denver Health Psych ER. In the last 2 years, my full-time job has been clinical director of student mental health on the Anschutz Medical Campus, and then part-time at Denver Health in the Psych ER.
Thank you. What defense exhibit are we up to?
I think it's 72, right? Doctor, could you pull the microphone closer to your mouth, please? Thank you.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Doctor, I'm handing you what I have marked 72. Can you take a look at that and tell me?
Yes, I do. It's my CV.
And is that, I think we received that late 2014 or early 2015. Is that basically a current CV of yours? Can you just take a peek at it?
Yes, I've had a couple more presentations since then, but otherwise it's current.
Judge, I'd move the admission of D-TR-72.
Is there any objection to her CV being admitted?
Your Honor.
All right, without objection, it's admitted.
And I would ask that Dr. Davis be qualified under Rule 702 in the People v. Schreck as an expert in psychiatry, Your Honor.
Any objection?
Same objection as before, Your Honor.
All right, based on my previous ruling, the court will accept Dr. Davis as an expert witness in the field of psychiatry. That's pursuant to Rule 702 of the Colorado Rules of Evidence and the decision in People v. Schreck, which is cited at 22 Pacific 3rd, 68, Colorado 2001. Members of the jury, that means that I have now accepted Dr. Davis as an expert witness in the field of psychiatry, and she is now able to render expert opinions in that field. Please remember that you're not bound by the testimony of a witness who testifies as an expert. The credibility of an expert's testimony is to be considered as that of any other witness. You may believe all of an expert witness's testimony, part of it, or none of it. The weight that you give the testimony is entirely your decision. All right. With that, you may proceed, Mr. King.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, were you employed at Denver Health Medical Center in the same capacity as a psychiatrist back in November of the year 2012?
Yes.
Did you come into contact and were you part of a psychiatric consult team that treated Mr. James Holmes during that period of time? And you're going to need to keep your voice up. If you're soft-spoken, that's fine. Just lean into that mic a little bit there.
Would counsel approach for just a moment, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, let me give you the limiting instruction that I have given you before, and that is that the court has admitted the testimony of Dr. Davis only for a limited purpose. You may consider this testimony only as to the issues raised by the defendant's plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. You shall not consider this evidence for any other purpose. The same limiting instruction applies to the testimony of the two witnesses who just testified, the testimony of Jose Sanchez Lopez and the testimony of David Maldonado, as well as Exhibit D-TR-71, which is the picture that was displayed earlier today. Does everyone understand that? And everyone's saying yes and nodding their head yes. And for that matter, it also, the instruction also applies to the exhibit that I just admitted, which is Dr. Davis's CV. All right, thank you. You may proceed, Mr. King.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you explain to us how the psychiatric consult team works in the, or how it worked with regard to Mr. Holmes's being a patient of yours down at Denver Health?
You mean that particular night?
Sure. And how is it that there's a consult team, and how does the psychiatric consult team become involved in a patient's care?
Sure. So the consult team becomes involved when the admitting medical team feels that there is a psychiatric issue and they request a psychiatric consult. That particular night, I was the attending in the psychiatric emergency room, which means I'm the attending on call for consults and backup for the resident on call as well.
So you got a call from somebody, I'm assuming, to come down, is that right?
Yes.
And when did you have contact with Mr. Holmes first? Do you recall?
I believe it was 11:15 in the evening of 2012.
And let me know if you need to see any of your notes or anything to refresh your recollection. I could show you those.
Okay, I probably will.
Okay. When you saw Mr. Holmes, were you alone or were you there with a resident with you?
I actually had two residents with me, one who was on call that night, who did the evaluation with me, and one who was on the consult team from the day and hadn't gone home yet.
Okay, so these residents then, are they psychiatrists too?
Yes. Well, they're in psychiatry residency training.
And so what would be the function of having the resident there and your relationship with the resident in this consult?
So generally, the resident does the first line evaluation under my supervision.
And so in this case, for example, did the resident basically write down the notes from your consult and then you signed off on them? Does that make sense?
Yes, we sat down together and wrote up the evaluation.
And would that have happened just fairly soon after you had the contact with Mr. Holmes?
It happened right after we had the consult.
Are those notes that you taken in the regular course of conducting your business there in treating patients? Is that something you do as a regular practice?
Yes.
And is the procedure that's instituted made to make sure that those notes and documentations are accurate at the time that they're made?
Yes, we're supposed to be accurate.
And they're made by, these are lawyer questions, are those notes made by yourself and these residents, made by people who are in the know, people who know what they're talking about when they write down what's going on?
Yes.
And are they preserved in the course of your business at Denver Health Medical Center in order so that you have accurate means of referring back to them later on for future patient care, or if you have to forward the history to somebody else, or if you have to come to court or testify, something like this?
Yes, they're preserved in the medical record.
Now, when you, excuse me, prior to your seeing Mr. Holmes, had he seen the medical team already and they called you in? Is that how it took place?
Yes.
And do you know who that was that he saw or not off the top of your head?
I don't know who that was off the top of my head.
Do you know by the time you saw him whether or not he had been medicated with any antipsychotic medication or not?
He had received 5 milligrams of intramuscular Haldol about 30 minutes before we saw him.
What is Haldol?
Haldol, generic is haloperidol. It's an antipsychotic.
And it may sound silly to ask this question, but what would you prescribe Haldol for?
So you'd prescribe Haldol for signs and symptoms of psychosis, such as disorganized behavior, agitation, hallucinations, delusions.
And do you know whether or not by the time, well, when you saw him, had Mr. Holmes been at the hospital for a couple or several hours at that point?
I believe so. I don't know exactly how long.
Okay. By the time you saw him, were you aware of whether his condition had improved somewhat, perhaps as a result of the Haldol or not?
Per nursing staff and the sheriffs, they reported that his behavior had become more organized.
In what way?
Prior to us arriving, they reported that he was repeating nonsense phrases and smearing feces.
Okay, thank you. Did you see that when you came in contact with him, any behaviors like that?
He was still disorganized, but he was able to participate in the conversation, and he wasn't smearing feces anymore.
Were you able to, did you get any of the medical chart from the jail? So did you have some idea of why he had been brought to Denver Health?
Yes, we had notes from the previous few days.
Do you recall anything about what types of symptoms he'd been exhibiting that caused his admission to your facility, ma'am?
I recall the note said he was sometimes taking off his clothes, behaving bizarrely, demonstrating self-injurious behaviors such as jumping backwards off his bed or running his head into the wall, saying things that didn't make sense, refusing to eat or drink.
Did you, when you talk about disorganization, what do you mean when you say disorganization? Is that a clinical term of art?
It is a clinical term. It basically means not able to organize in order to relate or function in a normal capacity. So demonstrating behaviors that don't necessarily make sense or go along with reality.
And is that a hallmark, one of the hallmark symptoms of psychosis?
It is, yes.
You've seen psychotic people before, I'm
Yes.
assuming.
Yes.
Give us an estimate of how many psychotic people you've seen before or treated.
Hundreds. I have no idea, but hundreds, if not more than 1,000.
Is psychosis the type of thing that in clinical experience becomes easier to identify and recognize over time? I'm assuming that's true. I don't know, but I'm
Yes,
wondering.
that's true.
Let's talk briefly about delirium as well, if we may. What's delirium?
Delirium is altered mental status due to a medical condition.
Is there a difference in the way the altered mental status of someone who is delirious presents than the altered mental status of someone who's suffering from a psychosis presents, or are they difficult to parse out?
They can be difficult to parse out, but there are distinguishing factors. Delirium tends to present with an altered sensorium or a decreased level of alertness, where a person will have difficulty maintaining awareness and engaging in ongoing conversation or interview or evaluation. So you would see that in delirium. Delirium also tends to have a waxing and waning course, where a person may present as coherent and with it for a period of time, and then disorganized and psychotic and unaware for a period of time. So it tends to fluctuate.
And I might have missed it. You said some word that I did not recognize. It was, delirium was something?
An altered sensorium.
Sensorium. What does that mean?
So that basically means that the person doesn't have a normal level of alertness or awareness.
Would that be awareness of who they are or where they are, like orientation, something like that? Or?
Ability to sustain or maintain attention, basically.
And that waxing and waning that you were talking about, is that something that can happen over days or weeks, or something that you're talking about that happens, over the course of minutes or hours?
Either.
Okay. And what causes delirium?
Many things, any sort of medical illness, many medical illnesses.
How about metabolic disturbance, not eating or drinking enough?
That could.
When you encountered Mr. Holmes, did he seem to be disoriented about, was it your impression, clinical impression, that he seemed disoriented about where he was or what was happening, or the questions that were being asked of him?
I don't know if I use the term disoriented. He gave answers that didn't necessarily make sense.
Okay, so you would ask him a question and he would respond? Would he respond to you?
Yes.
What kind of responses would you get back from him, though?
Responses that didn't necessarily answer the question, or answered the question in a bizarre manner that didn't necessarily make sense. Sometimes he would answer in ways that made sense. For example, he did know that he was in a hospital.
Okay. What about the way he presented? Did that make you think that the fact that he responded to you, but responded with things that didn't make sense most of the time, did that make you think this is more like a delirium or more like a psychosis, or both?
Psychosis seemed to be the predominating presentation when I saw him.
And you saw him on the 15th, which was the day that he was admitted, is that right?
Yes.
You had heard from the jail, had you not, that there was some record of him not refusing to eat and drink periodically over the days preceding at the jail. Was there some record of that?
Yes, there was.
Do you know whether or not he had been treated by the medical team for any kind of metabolic disturbance? Have they given him an IV or given him potassium or anything along those lines? Do you recall, or do you not?
He had gotten IV fluid. I'm not sure whether they'd given him potassium yet or any electrolytes.
Now, when you saw Mr. Holmes, did he appear disheveled? Was he dressed? How did he present?
He was disheveled. He had a lot of bruises and marks on him. His eyes were bloodshot. One of them had a bright red spot in it. I believe he had blood crusted on his nose. I don't remember if he was dressed, but I do remember he was partly exposed somehow. Either his clothes or the bed sheets were falling off of him.
Okay. Did he appear to be disturbed by the fact that he was exposed?
No.
Is that significant?
It's consistent with psychosis.
Did you observe anything that made you think that he might have been responding to internal stimuli, things going on inside him that weren't really going on in the environment?
Yes, he would sometimes pause a long time before answering questions, which is what people sometimes do when they're hearing auditory hallucinations.
Do you recall whether you asked him if he had been eating or drinking or why he had?
Yes. This is where it might be helpful to see my notes.
Okay. If I can approach the witness, Your Honor, I'll show counsel this first.
You may approach.
Thank you.
Take a look through there and let us know and refresh your memory.
And for the record, Mr. King, you've handed her her notes, medical notes.
Yes, Your Honor, and I can mark those if you'd like.
That's all right.
So when we asked him why he wasn't eating or drinking, he said, "I didn't know what the juice is, and I was in a box without any juice and couldn't reach it." When asked why he didn't eat yesterday, he said, "When was yesterday? How long was yesterday?"
Did you ask him if he received any meals in the jail?
I asked him if he received any meds in the jail.
Meds, okay. And what did he say about that?
He received meds to find things, as well as rest and sleep.
Is that meds to find things in your notes? Or maps to find things?
You know, that's an excellent question. It actually looks like maps to find things.
Did he complain about his thoughts not making sense at some point?
Yes, he did, and he said he needed to be more in line with what other people think.
Now, given his statements and his presentation, was it your clinical impression that he was psychotic at the time, ma'am?
Yes.
And did he make a statement about his food being red? And what was the significance of that? If it is significant to you.
Let me find that. I do recall he made a statement about his food being red. I don't remember what that was in response to. But no, it didn't really have any particular significance other than that it didn't make sense.
Okay.
And was consistent with psychotic answers.
Your impression notes that the patient presents psychotic with catatonic features. What are catatonic features, ma'am?
So the not eating and not drinking is consistent with catatonia. He also demonstrated odd body postures with his arms and legs, which is something people sometimes do when they're catatonic.
What kind of odd body postures?
Putting arms or legs in positions and just leaving them there, positions that didn't really have any purpose.
Okay. And is catatonia a psychotic symptom as well?
Catatonia can be a symptom of psychosis or a mood disorder.
Did he endorse any hallucinations when you talked to him? Auditory hallucinations, do you recall?
Yes, he did. He said he heard 8 voices.
And did you know who the voices were, or could you, any other comments about the voices?
We asked him if he recognized the voices, and he said, I think so. When we asked him if they were male or female, he said 7 and 1.
You remember prior to the, you said prior to being given the Haldol, before you saw him, the report was that he was repeating nonsensical phrases or something like that. Do you remember what those might have been, or one of them might have been?
One example they gave was the word shadow point, repeating that over and over.
Just repeating the same thing over and over again?
Yes.
Is there a psychiatric word for that?
Echolalia.
Following your contact with Mr. Holmes, did you have any other subsequent contact with him while he was at your facility there, or is that the only day that you saw him?
I only saw him that one day.
Did you make any change in the prescribed medication of Haldol, or did you maintain that medication and dosage?
I believe they had only ordered him a one-time dose, so we recommended that they order a scheduled dose of 2.5 milligrams twice a day, as well as lorazepam, 2 milligrams 3 times a day to treat the possible catatonia.
So you can, in addition to the lorazepam, you continued the Haldol?
Correct.
I don't think I have any other questions. Your Honor, I'd like to mark her notes as D-TR73 and move the admission of those notes, please.
Is there any objection, Ms. Pearson?
Yes, Your Honor, objection would be cumulative to her testimony.
All right. I'll take it under advisement and defer on that. Members of the jury, it's 10:15. Let's go ahead and take our morning break at this time. Please keep in mind my admonishments during the break. They all apply, and I'll see you back here in 20 minutes. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury has exited the courtroom. Could I see those notes, please?
Yes.
I'm going to review them during the break, and then I'll rule on them after the break. All right. The court will be in recess. Thank you.
Please rise.